It all started after moving into my new house. Yeah, that's pretty cliche, believe me, I know. But it's what happened. I never experienced anything supernatural before. Though interested, I never really expected anything to happen to me. I was able to rent the house for pretty cheap. I didn't really think anything of it because it was old, not in the best of neighborhoods, so I just guessed I got a good deal. After moving everything in, things were fine for a while. I don't remember exactly when it all started because it seemed so minor at the time. I'd leave a light on in the kitchen or bathroom and come back to find it off. Honestly, I thought I was just forgetting that I turned them off already. After a while, I became curious and started leaving a couple lights on purposely. Sometimes nothing would happen. Sometimes I'd come back to find the lights turned off. By now, I figured something was askew. I wasn't really scared, just confused. I thought maybe something was wrong with the electrical. I started leaving lights on a bit more often. Friggin' killed my electric bill. I thought I might be able to get some sign of why they would randomly shut off. That's when it started to take another turn. The first real time I remember something crazy happening was when I left the kitchen and living room light on while I was asleep. I woke up to a deep rumbling growl coming from the kitchen. Now, from the bedroom you can see down the hall to the living room, and that room is connected to the kitchen. I remember waking up and thinking there was an animal or something in my house. I looked down the hall toward the living room to see that the room wasn't as bright. Somebody had flicked off the light in the kitchen. Another low growl came, this time from the living room. I nearly screamed as I saw something bolt across the end of the hallway. Then, the living room light went out. I couldn't tell exactly what it was though. It just seemed like a black shadow or something. It didn't really matter. I was scared shitless. I bolted from my bed and threw on the bedroom light, expecting something to be in the room, getting ready to come after me. Nothing. There wasn't anything in the room. I let out a low breath and then slowly moved down the hall into the living room. Once I got to the end, I practically flew to throw on the light switch. Nothing. Next, the kitchen light. And once again, nothing. I was starting to think I dreamt it all when I went to turn off that kitchen light, but I stopped. I was a grown man, but here I was terrified to turn off that switch. And I'll admit it, I slept with the light on that night. That was a mistake. When I woke up the next morning, all the lights were off again. I tried to drag myself out of bed, but winced as my body felt sore. I pulled the sheets off to see long red marks running down my arms and legs. It looked like something had scratched me in the night. That terrified the hell out of me, but not nearly as much as when I saw what happened. Every light I left on was smashed. Every light bulb that was on last night was broken. Every lamp knocked over and smashed in. My breath got caught in my throat as I looked around. This place was fucked up as all hell, and something tried to do something to me last night. I called into work that day and went to immediately replace all the lights. I didn't know what to do. I thought about leaving, and this probably sounds stupid, but this was my home. It was my first time away from my family, and this was my home. I couldn't give it up, so I stayed, even as things got worse. Though I was beginning to become terrified of the dark, I couldn't really sleep with the light on me at night. I'd leave other lights on though, like in the hall or in the living room. I would give myself enough light to see fairly well in my darkened room, and almost every night I'd wake up to hear something growling and prowling around the living room. That's when the lights would shut off. I didn't want to go look. I was terrified of the thought of being in the same room with whatever was in there, so I curled up in my bed and prayed it never came for me. This went on for a while. One night I had had enough. I bought a gun and turned on every light in the house. Then I sat in the middle of the living room with my gun in my lap and a baseball bat sitting next to me. I waited. At first, there was nothing. After a while though, around 2 a.m., I began to hear it. Oddly, it was behind me. I turned and peeked toward the hallway leading to my bedroom. I could hear that familiar growl. I swallowed and held my gun in one hand and the bat in the other. Slowly, I began to step closer to better my view of the bedroom. From the living room, I began to get a view of my bedroom. I heard a loud thump, followed by an inhuman roar. I, being the brave man I was, jumped back and away from the hallway. I wanted to end this, but dear God, I didn't want to deal with that thing. Through the loud noise of tearing and smashing, I managed to hear an audible click, then nothing. Slowly, I went back to peek down the hall, and the light was off once again. I took a deep breath and ventured forth, my weapons ready. When I reached my bedroom, I flicked the light on and gasped. My bed was ravaged, torn completely apart. It was like an animal had jumped into it and just ripped it to shreds. I stepped forward to look at what was left of my bed. I just stood in shock for who knows how long. It wasn't until I heard the sound of a familiar growl that I turned around. Standing near my door, right at the light switch, was when I finally saw it. It was a man, a pale, rotting man with a mangled body who looked like he had once been a dog's chew toy was staring at me. I was in such shock. I couldn't even raise my weapons. He stared at me for just a moment and then flicked off the light. I screamed. I'm not even ashamed to admit it. I screamed and bolted down that hallway. I didn't even care if that was where the man had just been standing. I ran past where I had just seen him, swinging my bat like a madman. I nearly put a hole in the hallway as I ran from my darkened bedroom into the safe light of the hall. I turned to look back, just in time to see him once again near the light switch of the hall. He turned that one off too. By then, I didn't want to fight. I wanted to be safe. I burst past the living room and into the brightness of my kitchen. I heard the sound of growling and scratching nearly all around me. I knew he was coming. I looked back once again to see that mangled, rotten corpse of a man turn off another light with a broken finger. I was plunged into terrifying darkness, so I broke for the living room. This was going to be my last stand. I'd have to fight it. I drew close to the standing lamp. That was my last line of defense. It hated the dark, so I'd have to stay right here, next to the comfort of this standing lamp. I waited for it to turn off, but it never did. I looked around and quiet. Nothing but quiet. I turned to look at that saving grace of a lamp that refused to yield. I started to find myself laughing, a happy to be alive laugh. I thought I'd finally be okay. I stepped closer and almost hugged that lamp, until I saw it. I first heard the growl coming not from behind me, but from in front, from that lamp. My eyes widened and I stared as that light from that lamp intensified. I stumbled back, and I don't know what happened, but I think I tripped on something. I just know I found myself flat on my back, staring up at that bright, intense light. It wasn't comforting any longer, just hot and heavy and bright. I thought it was going to burn me away, and then it came. I don't have words to describe what poured from that lamp's light. It was hideous, twisted, and filled with rage. I know I'll never forget those eyes, though. They were bright, hot, and white. Two glowing circles of pure malice. It hated me. It hated everything about me, but not just me. It hated all of us, every human being. But it was stuck here, and it would lash out at whatever it could. Me? I don't know how I knew this. I just knew. It lunged for me, and I prepared myself for a painful death. Click. The light went out. Once again, darkness. Sweet, quiet, relaxing darkness. I stayed on the ground for a long moment, letting my eyes adjust as I kept my gaze fixated where my standing lamp was. As the seconds passed, I could start to make him out. That mangled man standing by the lamp. One torn hand upon the switch as he looked down at me. I understood then. I understood what it all meant. Everything that had happened. The man pulled his hand away from the lamp. He pointed his mangled finger toward it and very clearly and slowly turned his head from side to side. All I could do was nod in agreement. He wasn't the one trying to harm me. All this time, all those instances, he was trying to protect me. That creature could only appear in the light, and this mangled man had been trying to keep me safe. He didn't want someone else to repeat his mistakes. I moved out the very next day and never looked back. Whatever it was confined to that house, because so far, nothing has come at me from the light. However, That thing will always stick with me in my mind. Every night in my new apartment, I make a habit of wandering around the house, making sure every light is off and every curtain is closed. Then I plunge myself into quiet, comforting, and safe darkness. This story was submitted by David to creepypasta.com. Thanks for listening.